Hey guys, welcome back here to today's episode of The Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and making some time out of your day to do so. And today I want to explain to you guys what is probably the number one reason why most people lose fish once they get them hooked. This is going to happen. It's not anything that's going to work 100% because there's a lot of different reasons why fish get off. But there's one thing that you can do to really noticeably, increase the amount of fish you actually get in the boat when you actually hook them. So we're going to discuss that in today's episode here. And also, guys, two things real quick before we get started. I want to remind you of that Tackle Warehouse and Solar Bat both have got these big 12 days of Christmas sale going on right now on my Signature Series glasses here, my RB3s and 2s. You can get them at 50% off for one more week, guys. And you get a free hard case with them to put them in, free shipping and handling. You can get them at my Tackle Warehouse link or on the Solar Bat link. I'll put both links in the description. And also, guys, Tackle Warehouse has got a ton of good sales going on with this Christmas stuff. I'll have my Tackle Warehouse link in the description if you guys are doing some last minute shopping or want to get stocked up on some baits for next year. So appreciate that. Okay, first of all, before I get into the number one reason, there's a lot of different reasons that you're losing fish. And I'm going to get into that a little bit here after I identify the number one. But the first, number one most important thing, the reason that people lose fish is the way they set the hook on the fish. And I'm going to explain this a little bit, then I'm going to get into some of the stuff that's just as important as far as the other reasons and some of the stuff you can do about it. Most of the problem that you have when people set the hook incorrectly, a lot of them are out of position. First of all, they set the hook off balance and they set the hook, the timing is wrong with it. And in order to set the hook correctly, it's a combination of different things. You have to get your balance and you have to have proper timing on your hook set, and you have to set the hook with the right type of force or lack of force on it. So here is what you can do to really prevent losing fish. Number one is when you get a bite, I don't care if it's on a spinnerbait or a jig or a topwater lure or whatever, you have got to discipline yourself to hesitate before you actually set the hook. A lot of people, especially if you've gone for a while without a bite, they tend to set the hook just as soon as they feel it. Just like almost like a reaction, like a live nerve ending. You feel something and you jerk back immediately. You have got to develop the discipline to hesitate a little bit. Say, for example, if you're fishing a plastic worm and you feel you got a bite, there's no big hurry, guys, to set the hook. Let your line tighten up. Let the fish swim out 4 or 5 feet with it before you set the hook. And if you're reeling a bait, like you're reeling a crankbait or something like that, and this is harder to do, something that requires a little bit discipline, is when you feel a strike on a crankbait or a spinnerbait, don't just jerk immediately. Just pull into the fish and start reeling at the same time. So almost like you're not actually setting the hook, but at the same time, you're putting force on the fish by reeling faster and pulling into that fish. And more importantly, it's a little bit of a hesitation, and that's going to help tremendously. And the way that you set the hook has a lot to do with it too. You don't ever want to reel down and set that hook like the traditional, you see people whacking them like that. That's not the way you want to set the hook on a fish, guys. It's all about pulling back on your rod with a tight line. It's not about how much force you generate. It's keeping that line tight and keeping the pressure consistently on. So your hook set in that terms looks a little bit different. I'm in the truck, so I can't explain it here, but your hook set is more, say for example, I've got a fish on there, I'm just pulling back into that fish and reeling at the same time. That is going to increase the number of fish that you get in the boat tremendously, just by number one, a little bit of hesitation, and number two is just pulling instead of setting into the fish. So important. Okay, some other factors can be your hook size. A lot of people think that when you lose fish, maybe your hooks are dull or your hooks are too small. That's usually not the case. Usually, if you're going to lose fish, your hooks are too big. And the reason I say that is the penetration aspect is key, and you get better penetration on a hook if it's a smaller hook with a smaller diameter. So having these larger hooks with a larger diameter of wire on it is actually hurting you because you're not getting the wire and that large diameter wire, you're not penetrating it. All you have to do is penetrate that barb into a fish's mouth. I don't care how big the hook is. If that barb is penetrated, that fish is not going to get off. I mean, unless that hook straightens out. And if you use a good hook like those Gamakatsu G finesse hooks, G finesse trebles, you're not going to get off with them. That's the main thing with it. Another thing with that is you've got to realize it, and this is another reality of fishing that may offer some comfort if you do lose a fish. Sometimes there is nothing that you can do that's going to prevent a fish from getting off, because it's the way that the fish bites the lure, and you don't know what that is. When a fish bites a lure, whether it be a jig or a crankbait or whatever, at the time of the bite, you don't know where that hook is positioned within that fish's mouth when you actually set the hook or put pressure on it. They may have if you're fishing a jerkbait, they may have all 3 hooks in the mouth, or they may have one barb from the back hook. You don't really know. And sometimes on a jig, let's say, for example, you're working that jig or that plastic worm on the bottom, and that fish sees that bait and inhales it, it sucks it all the way in. The way that jig is positioned with inside of the mouth of that fish when you set the hook has a big role to play if you're going to lose that fish or not. Let's say, for example, you're fishing your jig and you're hopping your jig along the bottom. You got a 4-pound bass that goes down on that jig, and it flares its gills and it inhales that whole jig in its mouth. So the jig is in that fish's mouth. Now, based upon how that happens, the position of the hook may be upside down in the fish's mouth. It may be in the back. It may be barely in the front. You don't know the position of that hook. So a lot of times when you set the hook and you pull that jig through that fish's mouth, sometimes you pop that fish's mouth open and you don't even get any hook in it. And sometimes, you'll get a piece of skin like that, or you'll hook it in a soft part of the mouth. And sometimes you hook it in a bony part and you don't ever lose the fish. So if you do lose the fish, let's say, for example, you have the right hooks and you do the right hook set and you do everything that I explained there, and you still lose the fish, most of the time it's how that fish has the lure in its mouth. So that can offer you some peace a little bit, knowing that you did everything you can. Hey man, there's just nothing. It just is what it is. The fish had the bait in its mouth or hit the bait from a funky angle, and that's all it is. A lot of times, guys, too, and this is one of the things that people don't realize about bass fishing, a lot of times a bass will hit a lure with their mouth completely shut, and they're not even biting the lure. They're trying to kill it with their mouth shut. I've seen them do this 100 times. And you set the hook, and sometimes when you set the hook, even though the bass's mouth is closed and the bass is not even trying to bite it, you snag that fish somewhere on the outside of the mouth, underneath the chin, on the side, or whatever, and you fight that fish, and you fight it, and it comes up and jumps off because it's just barely hooked from the outside. So a lot of different variables with it as far as the things that contribute, to losing a fish. It's going to happen. You're not going to stop it. But if you just listen to what I just said there, guys, about you need to hesitate, don't get in a big hurry, don't set that hook hard, just pull into them and keep the pressure going, you'll have a noticeable increase in how many fish you stop losing. So anyway, I hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.